Now, it remains to be seen whether the former president will return to jail following that ruling from the ConCourt. Zuma, you might remember, was incarcerated at Escourt Correctional Centre in July 2021, resulting in mass riots and looting across parts of Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Newzroom Afrika's Karinda Jagmohan is watching what happens next. She joins us now live from the N3 highway near Durban. And this particular case, Karinda, is considered as many as being important for South Africa's constitutional order. And that's because we all remember what unfolded in the aftermath of that ruling. So perhaps take us through how those protests began unfolding when Zuma was jailed 2 years ago.
Personally, Ayanda, while tragic memories are being stoked at the news that has emerged yesterday of the apparent imminent incarceration of the former president, but I'll take you back to 2 years ago. And in fact, this court order, the court ruling, comes as the country looks at the 2-year anniversary since the July 2021 unrest. 2 years ago, on July 8th, in the early hours of that Thursday morning, the luxury vehicles belonging or carrying the former president rolled quietly into the Escourt Correctional Services Centre. We were there at the scene. It was a very cold night, like it is today. And at that point, at that juncture of Zuma being incarcerated 2 years ago, we started seeing protests unfurling. One of the first signs of protest was on the N3 highway, which is a major economic corridor, of course, and trucks were burnt at the Moy River Toll Plaza. At that juncture, we saw small pockets of protest starting across Durban as well, really on the main routes like this one, the M4 highway, the N3, like where I'm standing on now. And sooner those protests started descending into chaos and unfolding ultimately into the rioting and looting that we saw happen from that Sunday night going into Monday. Remember, on Sunday, President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the nation over lockdown regulations at the time, but at the end of the speech he spoke about the violent protests he was seeing, saying that those who are responsible for protesting will be held to account in terms of the rule of law. But of course, that ultimately we saw his speech or his words did not quell any violent situation. The riots continued for over a week, and we saw damage to the economy amounting to over billions of rands. Small businesses, large businesses destroyed by elements of the unrest, which many who have told the South African Human Rights Commission have said that this looked like or seemingly was coordinated incidents of violence that were planned. A number of people have been brought to the courts since then for allegedly instigating this violence, but the police, law enforcement authorities are yet to pinpoint the mastermind or the architects of the July 2021 unrest. And we're looking back at this because that unrest was spurred in the immediate aftermath of the incarceration of former President Jacob Zuma. So certainly on the ground today here in Durban, there are conversations about what will happen next if indeed Zuma is sent to jail again or he returns to jail. What will be the reaction of those who might be supporting him or who might be preventing him? In the meanwhile, the province is still rebuilding. I'd like you to take a listen to KZN Premier Nomusa Dube, who spoke about the financial cost, the impact of the July 2021 unrest.
As directed by His Excellency the President, also his announcement, the Minister of Finance announced the following measures to address the social unrest. They announced the 3.9 billion backing for companies that were destroyed. That was the money that was coming from the insurance, SASTRIA. The 2.3 billion support for small businesses, that was those that were not covered by insurance or by SASTRIA. And about 400 million re-injection into the Solidarity Fund.
Well, there you hear Premier Nomusa Dube speaking at a media briefing just yesterday, and moments or about an hour or so before that court ruling was handed down, indicating that the former president might be sent back to jail. Of course, this would be the Escourt Correctional Services Centre, but in the meanwhile, we know there's still a legal review around this matter on whether or not he will be taken back to jail. In fact, over the course of this day, I'm going to take you back to places across the city that were severely impacted by by the unrest, and we'll speak to businesses, security companies about how they feel about this matter. And actually, at this point, I want to show you where we are now. There has been security around us. I think just as we started this crossing, there were two SANDF members standing here. They've gone now, but of course, it's unclear whether they're here because of this, of the news about Zuma's incarceration, or really because of the portion of trucks that we have seen over the past week. Remember, we were told that SANDF members would be deployed to be stationed at some of the major points, and also a reminder that the police minister has said that the torching of trucks have not been linked to the unrest. There's no evidence of such, but of course certainly there will be people on the lookout for any indications of protests today.
Karinda Jagmohan, live to us there from the N3 near Durban. That's of course in KwaZulu-Natal. For now, Karinda, thanks very much indeed.